Kevin, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So you were featured, your organization, Ohio Urban Renaissance, was featured in the mid-May issue of the Business Journal. For somebody who may not be aware of what it is that you're doing, could you tell us a little bit about the Ohio Urban Renaissance?
Well, Ohio Urban Renaissance is a 501c3 nonprofit organization. Mm-hmm. We specialize in working with youth, target demographic, teens to late adolescence. They transition into early adulthood. We focus on youth outreach and providing supplemental support in the educational sector. So a lot of our programming is based off of helping the kids transition through high school and on to post-secondary education.
And I think that's something that makes your organization a little bit different, is that I think a lot of youth outreach is geared towards younger students, and you're, like you said, geared more towards high school students and getting them, you know, kind of that first step into adulthood and the real world.
Yes. Well, basically there's a lot of programs in the area. People don't have a problem with working with youth. So there are, there's just so many organizations that work with younger kids because you can discipline younger kids and there's not a lot of repercussions to that, and you're bigger than them. So when you're, when you're bigger than somebody, you feel more compelled to deal with them. It's easier to serve and protect them when you're bigger than them. Yeah. And I think with the teenage demographic, it's a demographic that is underserved. And because most programs are, in the school system, so you have whatever the high school is given. But at a certain age, teens are trying to separate themselves from leadership. They're trying to separate themselves from adults, and we all feel, these crazy alien teenagers. So, it's hard to deal with them. So for us, it's just, we recognized that there was a need, and then we had the ability and the rapport to be able to meet those needs and to be able to engage inside that sector.
Does that make it a little bit more challenging that you're dealing with older young people, because perhaps they're a little more set in their ways? They're not as malleable. You can't really, you know what I mean? You're not getting them when they're forming.
Yes.
They have formed,
yes.
so to speak, and those bad habits, and
you're combating a lot of things that are ingrained and born, a lot of traumas by that time, in the impoverished area. So for us, our focus is really just to be there to provide support, to provide guidance and direction, and be a voice, of reason, but also be a ear to listen when they need it. So for us, the biggest thing is the relationship, the dynamic of our relationship. So we run a lot of mentoring. Mentoring is at the foundation of all of our programming, whether it's informal or formal mentoring. So it's a really big thing for us to be able to reach those individuals and build those relationships to kind of point them in the right direction with some resistance. There is some resistance in those situations.
Sure.
But for us, it's rewarding because of there's always going to be ills when you're dealing with generational poverty. So when you're dealing with at-risk youth and underprivileged or underserved demographic, you're always going to have that pushback. So we're kind of prepared for that pushback because we remember being that pushback ourselves.
Right. Yeah, I remember being a kid too. How many students do you have enrolled right now, and kind of what's the area that you're serving?
Right now we really focus on the Mahoning Valley. We do have some kids out of Trumbull because as Liberty's right in our backyard, so we have some Liberty kids in our programming that we engage with. But we reach out, we have kids in all of the high schools currently right now. So we have kids in Youngstown City Schools, which is East High School, Cheney. We have Ursuline Youth, we have Mooney Youth. So we have kids on Academy for Urban Scholars, we have kids in the Mahoning County School. So we kind of are a melting pot for these kids because it's bridging the gap that's caused by you being sectioned off into these different schools and in these different neighborhoods. So we're kind of bridging the gap and just given a common place and a safe haven for our kids to develop and learn each other and establish relationships.
Let's talk about some of the programs. You have several programs. So you want to start with Ball?
Yeah. So
okay.
Ball was our flagship program that actually started Ohio Urban Renaissance, and it was born out of necessity. We were going over to my partner was actually substitute teaching in the school system at that time, and he may have been full-time teaching at that time, and I wasn't coaching, I was training youth at the time, and a coach had asked me to come over and observe their practice as they were, their tryouts. And the most amazing thing happened over at the tryouts. They had about 60 kids trying out for basketball. They had 2 positions open. The coach was keeping 13, had 13 returning players.
Yeah.
So 60 kids that were in there running as hard as they could, working as hard as they could. If they were in the bad stuff at that moment, they had given up everything to focus and be disciplined because of something. And that something was the want to play basketball. So whatever your why is in that situation, once you establish it, we seen that they had that why. And I have a background in basketball, and it was easy for us to say, okay, we found the carrot on the stick for them. So ball started off as, it's now transitioned to Ball Amongst Life Lessons, but it started off as Ball is Life. And the school that we partnered with initially was Life Skills School. So Ball is Life, in our first year we had about 64 kids. It ran for 8 weeks. It was mentorship, it was talked about diet, conflict resolution. We had workshops, different things of that nature. The kids played for a championship, and it was kids that were able to bring in their own teams with 5 of their friends, and then we would put 3 other kids with them. Or if you didn't have a team, we would place you on your own team. So it was really a diverse group of kids for each team.
Right.
And that helped to further build relationships and foster, kind of community a little bit. So that was our first program, and I think it was a big success. In our second year, we turned around, and we seen growth from 64 kids to 100 kids.
Oh,
so
geez.
I mean,
Yeah.
that was a really big growth, and then that's what started us to look for our own facility, because we didn't run it in our facility the first time.
Yeah.
So then we got our own facility because we didn't even have enough time. We couldn't rent enough physical time in a gym, to be able to house our program.
And as you've added on programs, it seems that you're kind of step by step taking the students closer to graduation and getting ready for what's next after graduation. It seems like the programs are built that way. Maybe I'm wrong.
If the kids are watching, you just gave away the trick.
Oh, okay.
So if the kids, for us, that is definitely our goal. That's the dynamic of our programming.
Right.
We start off. We have something that we use, the REACH model, and the R in the REACH model. I won't give away the other letters right now, but the R in our REACH model is recreation. So the first thing that we do is we find out what your interests, your hobbies are. Whether it's a sport, whether it's music, whatever if it's art. So we find what that recreational activity, that interest, that hobby is, and we use that as that carrot on the stick to kind of bring you in. And then once we get that kid in, we've got them. But once we get them in, and now we're able to build relationships and start to see, well, hey, what are your grades like? Hey, what do you want to do after school? Hey, what do you know? Have you ever considered this?
Yeah.
And start to kind of give them a less aggressive atmosphere for education.
Right.
School has a black eye. You get up every morning for 13 years, you know what I mean, K through 12, and you got to go to school, and you're being accountable, and you got homework, and you got all these things. So I mean,
you got to go to work.
You got to go to work,
You
and
know
it's
what I
the
mean?
same thing.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
for these kids, it's just giving them this kind of reprieve from the school system, just always dealing with teachers and principals and this, you know what I mean? You put me in this room full of kids and you tell me I can't have fun. But, you know what I mean? But where else do I go to have fun, So it's kind of hard. So that's why how we exist and we structure things.
So talk about some of the programs that come kind of later and how they help the students prepare for after high school.
ICANN is our initiative for college and academics now. ICANN is a very good program in my opinion, but I'm kind of biased. But it's a very good program because we get kids in the 9th grade. So we attack them as freshmen, and we're with them on through their high school experience to 12th grade, and then the whole time it's a college preparatory program, so we're streamlining them in and getting them ready for post-secondary education, which may not always be a 4-year university. It may be a 2-year university. It may be a barber school. It may be truck driving. We had a kid that went on to get his CDLs through truck driving. So it's just providing that kid with the support system to be able to succeed and go beyond just getting a high school diploma.
Right.
Or not getting a high school diploma, which is, the case for some kids.
Sure, yeah. And what about the, so you've got the ICANN, then there's what is now, what is next?
Yes.
Can you talk about that?
So win-win is what we call it. It's just kind of a terminology that we added to something. We seem to like acronyms. So
sure.
Win-win was something that we had already, before our organization started, we had youth that we were dealing with that were seniors.
Mm-hmm.
And we started this ICANN program, and you didn't want to put these seniors around these freshmen,
Right.
They still needed our tutelage. They still needed our, our direction. So we didn't want to, they weren't ready to be our junior ambassadors yet. Now they are. That's the beauty. Now they are. But in the beginning, they weren't ready to be junior ambassadors for our organization. So those kids, we structured win-win to kind of, those were some of the first kids that we got in college, and that's how our program started to follow kids through their college experience, because through win-win, these kids didn't have us and have a history with us for 4 years, that they already knew what we expect and knew what they could talk to us about, and knew that, hey, if you had girl problems, family issues, if you had school problems, whatever you had going on, you can talk to us about those things, and we're going to be open and honest with you. And I think that with win-win, that we actually just had one of our first graduates that started out in that program.
Okay.
And so, and those kids are able to talk to our freshmen, they're able to talk to our sophomores, and kind of give back and sharing their experiences. So it kind of keeps us relevant. So once again,
somebody can vouch for you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what you need in this generation.
Right. Yeah.
So, but ultimately, like I said, it gives us, it keeps us with a certain relevance and a rapport in our dynamic.
And you've got a pilot program, a new program coming this summer.
Yes.
You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yes. I'm so excited about it.
What's it called?
OUR Prep Academy.
Awesome.
It's a postgraduate program. It's really an expansion of our ICANN program. What we've done is we've taken our kids that we get as freshmen. You go from 9th to 12th, and when you get to the 12th grade and you graduate, you may not be 100% ready. It could be because of you goofed off from 9th to 12th grade.
Sure.
It could be because you didn't have the familial backing. It could be because of, you just weren't focused for whatever reason. Postgraduate education is a big thing in the New England states areas. Now it's really getting big in Texas and Florida, so in the South. But it's something that's been around and it's really expensive. So all our kids are familiar with like IMG. And IMG is down in Florida, but they're familiar with them because of the sports program. But they offer postgraduate programs, but these are 1 year, one-off, $60,000, $80,000 for these things. And what we've tried to do, of course, our area can't afford something like that. So what we were able to do is combine some of the resources that we have in our other programming and some of those successes and offer this year of development for our youth. So this one, you have a gap year. So as an athlete, if you're coming out of school, and a lot of our athletes are affected by what's now, it's like free agency in college, it's the transfer portal. So you have the transfer portal, you had the COVID relief, you had the COVID exemption from COVID-19 in the pandemic. So our athletes in our area aren't being recruited already at a high area because we're such a small area, but this even set us back even further. So now this gives a kid a year of development to, if you want to pursue and try to get a college education, to be able to get a full ride, a full scholarship. This gives you opportunity to work on your skill set. If your GPA is a little bit lower, this gives you an opportunity to take a couple college courses with one of our partnerships, one of our partner organizations, and be provided the help and the support and the resources to get your GPA up, because now you're trying to go on to the next level. So it's phase 2 of now a 3-phase academic initiative. This is a post-secondary initiative. It's ICANN. It's right into OUR Prep, and then there's the win-win for it. So, now it's into its 3 phases, and that's why it's so exciting for our organization.
Well, Kevin, if there are people out there who would like to help you in your work, how can people help?
We're a 501c3. So the number one way to help a nonprofit and charitable organization is money, Mike.
Right.
Money.
I could have guessed that.
So, but we have an aggressive grant schedule. So we write grants. Another way is parental involvement. You know,
Okay.
we take recommendations for our programming from the teachers, from the school systems, but we take parent recommendations. You know, you're having trouble with a kid doesn't know exactly what to do. Hey, and you want to steer them in the right direction. We're here to offer that support and offer that help. The school systems. Before the pandemic, we were inside East High School 2 times a week running our programming. And, we're looking right now coming out of the pandemic to see what that looks like to get back in every school system now, 1 or 2 times a week with this after school programming. Because it's one thing to get them over to our facility, but it's another thing for them to see us in their facilities, in their backyard, in their homeroom, in their classrooms, and realize that these guys are here for us no matter where we are, because we've walked those same hallways.
717 Credit Union. Business services designed to meet your daily needs. Commercial loans, business deposits, merchant and payroll services. 717 Credit Union. It's knowing you were treated right every time.